Dear students, let us start the discussion on today's newspaper, that is 15th March 2017. The first article is by Shiv Vishwanathan. It talks about a reflection of the election of our time. So this article reflects the present result in UP and what made the BJP to get into such a victory. So understand that today in the globalized world, across the emerging economies, a new aspirational middle class is growing. So previously in India, the politics of the poor has dominated the electoral narrative. Today, the politics of the middle class are dominating. So this is one of the reasons why the electoral percentage, voter turnout is tremendously increasing in India. And second thing is, so the politics of caste, religion, politics of reservation, these are being more replaced by the politics of development. Here, the development is narrowly interpreted as economic growth. So, what are the challenges herein? The first is, in our developmental narrative, we are undermining equality justice concerns. Other way around. Today, we are having an individualistic aspiration, or our communitarian way of life is more becoming individualistic. So, in the process, the public spaces are being filled with the need for economic growth and prosperity rather than the need for equality and justice. And second is, in the name of nationalism, the right to dissent is being curtailed. So the loss of right to dissent is the biggest compromise made by the people, aspirational middle class, to gain an opportunity for economic growth and prosperity. So this is what is the nutshell of this article. You don't need to get into that ideological perspective, but try to take this way. So in the globalized world, and individualistic aspirations are dominating the collective aspirations. And second, there is a growth of middle class and electoral dynamics are dominated by the middle class narrative today. And finally, then alternative pitch towards economic opportunity for all that has provided for a victory to the BJP. So, the second article is Prejudice makes no distinction. If you see the last week's article on attacks against Indian Americans, there is one important point. So, racism will not curtail or will not limit itself to one sector, one group. Once it starts, it gets encompasses everyone. So it was the history of the United States of America in the early 20th century where discrimination was there against all the citizens. And the discrimination was also institutionalized then. Slowly, as the Trump has become the president of United States of America, the racism and discrimination is taking a new turn. So, in this context, Indians, what they have to do? As of now, Indians are the most prosperous community in the United States of America, but their civil and political representation and their participation in civil and political discourses is very minimal. On the other hand, if you see the Jews, they are very active on the civil and political front. And second is, Indians have to take part in this. Along with this, Indians shall not divide among themselves on caste or religion lines. So racism has no boundaries, racism has no limits. So what we have to do is, we have to become the partners in a collective fight of all the communities against the racism. And the next is, on the rocks. This is related to the Scotland issue. So the 2015, it was landmark in the UK history because for the first time the Scotland referendum on the Scotland exit from UK has come up. But however, the referendum has voted in favor of remaining within the UK. What were the major objections of the Scotland? Why Scotland wants to move away from UK? What are cultural reasons? Most of the cultural aspects of the Scotland, these are getting neglected in UK. And second is economic. So it was stated that whatever the Scotland is giving to UK, it is not getting back the same. And third is the related to this Brexit recently. I mean, the second referendum is related to Brexit. So after the Brexit referendum, there is the clear divisions are visible. The Scotland has favored for remaining in EU, but the other Wales and England has opted for moving out from European Union. So, is the right time to do so? Is the right time to conduct the referendum on Scotland's independence? It is neither in the interests of UK nor in the interests of the Scotland. The first thing is Scotland's economy is on downturn. So fiscal deficit is high and low oil prices have severely dented the economy of the Scotland. And second thing is there is no wide-based support for the Scotland to move away from the UK. And third thing is immediate change in the economy cannot happen after the independence in Scotland. European Union may not readily admit the Scotland because the Spain is also having such a dissent. So in this context, if European Union admits the Scotland after its independence, it may send a wrong signal to the other partners as it is encouraging the secession within the countries. So in this context, the Scotland has to rethink its demand for referendum. Let's get into the Sham Seren's interview. This article is very much important from your interview perspective. So you can make a very good argument, make opinions based on this interview. So I am dividing this article into three parts: India-US relations, India-China relations, India-Russia relations. So with regard to India-US relations, the dominant part is the trade, immigration, and then defense. Now, with regard to the defense, already we have bipartisan support and is expected to move forward. And as the Trump has come up, the protectionism is going to be the highlighted issue. So, is Indian industry is getting affected because of this? Now, understand, most of our software exports are to the US. So, India has to diversify its software exports to different destinations. And most of the gainers from the H1B visas are Indians. So the software industry is expected to get affected because of the limitation of visas. But however, understand, visas are an immigration issue to be raised before the WTO. And with India-US relations are bound to change because of the US role, because of the role US is going to play in the world affairs in the future. So Obama's Asia pivot has undercurrents of China's containment, in which a larger role is envisioned for India. So the President Trump is no more in a mood of containment, global alliances, etc. So obviously, India's space with regard to international affairs from the perspective of United States of America is bound to decrease. And coming to other aspects, India-China relations. So unless the bilateral relations are being solved, the relations cannot find a new direction. So with regard to the trade, the only way forward for India is to raise its trade competitiveness. Then only it can correct its trade balance with China. So already China is sending the signals. Again, the China-India relation shall not be seen from the lens of the India-US relations. In foreign affairs, in diplomacy, there will be no zero-sum game. We have to see them as independent relations from each other. So, in this context, recently China has sent the signals to settle the border dispute. It has said that Dan Bigelow, he has offered that if India is ready to make compromises on the eastern sector, China was ready to make the compromises on the western sector. So, if you take 2005, the guidelines and parameters, political parameters, it has been clearly stated that the people on either side of the border and their interests will be taken into consideration. As Tawang, as people inhabited in this region and they belong to India, so eastern border cannot be much changed. So we have to see the border dispute settled as quick as possible. And with regard to other issues, China's increasing role in the global affairs, especially its mediation in Afghan peace process, is going to be good for India too. And it is also expecting India to play a greater role in Afghan peace process. And coming to Russia, India-Russia relations are on a downward trend. It is not majorly because of India's reluctance, it is majorly because of the Russia's move towards Europe and also China. It is trying to strengthen its relations, especially trade with these two fronts. Finally, the most worrisome for India it is related to Russia's engagement and recent hardware supplies to the Pakistan. India shall not take it as a reason to disengage with Russia. India has to deepen its engagement with Russia and persuade or send a clear signals to Russia. It is not expected from India. Now, not too accessible after all. It is about the people with disabilities. You know that Peoples with Disabilities Act has come into existence. It has increased the number of disabilities to 21% and is also providing reservations of 4% for the people with disabilities. So, access is the major problem to the people with disabilities. Either visual access, physical access, everything, access is the problem. So, in this context, Sugamya Bharat Abhiyan, that is Accessible India campaign, was launched, whose objective is to universal access, provide universal access to books, materials, government information, etc. So the tragedy is this: the rules which are being framed under the new law, the very rules are not being made accessible to the people with disabilities. For example, blind. So you did not give them in necessary language braille to make them to read that. So that's why accessible is just remaining as a promise rather than getting it fulfilled by the government. Now, coming to the news page. So let's talk about rural India poor in computing ability. So in our e-governance class, we talk about digital dividend. What did we say? Digital dividend leads to digital divide, sorry. Digital divide goes against the digital dividend, and digital divide goes against equality of development. It means digital divide manifests as developmental divide, democratic divide, and regional divides, regional gender divides. So, if you take in India, the NSSO survey has clearly stated that the computing ability in the rural India, it is just around 3.2%, and comes to urban India, it is around 32%. The computing ability's penetration itself is low. So understand, e-literacy is very much an important part to fight the digital divide. It is not just providing for the networks. Making the people to use the networks is important. That's where e-literacy and e-empowerment comes up. So the second thing is, the digital divide, it is going to hamper India's progress in the long run and turning itself into a digital economy. So let's take the regional divides. Chhattisgarh has got lowest percentage of 2.9% computing abilities. When you come to Kerala, it is around 32%. And if you take further, with regard to people, the tribal population has the lowest computing abilities. So from this, what we can say is the digital divide, due to lack of illiteracy and computing ability, spreads across the rural-urban divide, regional divides, divides across the population. And then enemy bill, property bill, was passed by Lok Sabha. So whatever the properties left behind by the people who migrated to Pakistan, their legal heirs will not be having any of the right over those properties because this bill is being passed. So let's take Saif Ali Khan. He is the legal heir for the Bhopal ruler. But the Bhopal ruler chose the Pakistan. So whatever the properties which are there, Mr. Saif Ali Khan will not become the legal heir for these properties. It is because inheritance of the Property Act do not apply to the enemy properties. So this is what the important aspect of this. Now, as usual, I gave you the notes, and this will be available to you at laix.in/civilsprep. And we are trying to address the speed of the website. Yesterday I spoke to the website guy. He's going to address it very soon. And thank you very much. All the best.